Hello and welcome to Casual Krakoa. I'm Dave Busing, founder and editor-in-chief of comicbookherald.com. You are listening to our live Casual Krakoa chat for Hellfire Gala predictions. And we're going to talk about a whole bunch of other things, so we'll take some questions here from those of you in the live chat. I'm going to expand upon my Hellfire Gala prediction that I made, my theory that I made for Marauders number 21, which is the kickoff issue here today. That is part one of the Hellfire Gala. We also had X-Force number 20 and Hellions number 12, which came out, which I will be talking about in brief, doing a little Casual Krakoa review as well. So thanks to those of you who are hopping in here on the live stream. It is much appreciated. Again, this is the third week in a row of Casual Krakoas. What I'm trying to launch here, a live stream every Wednesday on the Comic Book Herald YouTube channel. So if you're enjoying these conversations around X-Men comics, these will be more theory intensive, more prediction heavy, as well as taking the opportunity to answer some of the questions that you all are throwing my way in the chat here, whether you're using the super chat or whatever, right? I'll try to tackle some of your theories as well, which is a lot of fun. As you may notice, I did get dressed up this week, right? Gala night, damn right, we got dressed up. So I dusted off the suit jacket, first time since the pandemic, frankly, that I've had any occasion to put on the suit. Still got the Nightcrawler tee underneath, though. I think that matches here for the Hellfire Gala. This is, of course, the X-Men Mutant Kind's big party, right? Big time party, inviting all of the humans, dignitaries, and whatnot, as we saw in, again, Marauders, X-Force, and Hellions. So thanks as you all are trickling in. Definitely get your questions going. We'll talk X-Men comics here, but I'm going to start things off by expanding on the theory that I had in Marauders number 21. If you missed that video, I've got a full Kraken Krakoa number 186 review of Marauders number 21. Again, it is the kickoff part one of the Hellfire Gala, which is the X-Men, mutant Marvel event that's going to be going on all June long, okay, June 2021, and then we will go from there. But I'm going to expand upon that theory, and then I've got some other ideas. We're going to review Hellions. We're going to review X-Force number 20, because I haven't done full videos on those, and I've also got some other topics that I want to talk about. Maybe if there's time, and y'all are interested. There was some big Marvel news today outside of the X-Men universe, if you can believe it, right? Like, sometimes I pay attention to that. Sometimes, not always. We got Rom V, Al Ewing, and Brian Hitch announced on a new Venom ongoing that's going to be coming in the post-Cates Stegman era. And then in a swap, essentially, of creative ownership of titles, we're going to have Donny Cates and Ryan Ottley taking over Hulk, okay? That was announced as well. I think that book's coming in November. So I'll talk a little bit about my thoughts about what's coming for those series if people are interested and we have time after talking all of this X-Men. So, all right, let's do it. Let's go. Let's talk Hellfire Gala predictions and what's to come here. And then, of course, again, get your questions in the chat. If you use the super chat, definitely thanks so much for your support. And I am very likely to answer. I think there was one I missed last week, and I feel very bad about that, but otherwise I get to as many as possible. All right, so let's talk Marauders number 21. Again, this was Emma Frost's plan, right? This is Emma's master plan for... well, we don't know what. We don't know what for, and that's what's being parsed out here throughout the Hellfire Gala. So we knew Emma wanted to throw a gala. We knew she wanted to have all of mutant kind and all of humanity, essentially, right? Again, like foreign dignitaries, business leaders, and heroes. We have the Avengers. We have, Doctor Strange shows up. Doesn't need a gate, technically, right? We've actually seen, if you read the non-X book, mutant appearances of Krakoa, Doctor Strange has teleported to the island before. Kind of gouche, not to use the gate. But anyway, they're giving out these Krakoan flowers for individuals to access, this Krakoan land. It's an island that Emma had Magneto procure for her as a favor that he owed her back in Giant Size X-Men, written by Jonathan Hickman, in a comic that at the time, and honestly even still, was kind of like, what happened here? Like, why did this happen? Well, Emma procured this island to throw her Hellfire Gala festivities, okay? And in Emma's mind, what we see in Marauders number 21, there's a big plan here, essentially, for her to bring mutants and humans together. Now, what does that mean for Emma Frost? Well, we don't know for sure, right? Now, my main theory in Marauders number 21 was... let's back it up, actually. Before we get to the main theory, let's talk about one thing. The reading order for the Hellfire Gala for X-Men comics that Marvel has put, they put it in the back of X-Men comics that, of course, I'm leveraging and utilizing on comicbookherald.com, where I have a bunch of reading orders for all sorts of Marvel crossovers throughout history. That comic has, or that reading order has 4 issues listed as red, okay? And we know from the House of X and Powers of X days, Powers of 10 days, that when a comic is highlighted red in one of those reading orders, it is especially critical that there's going to be some massive revelation that happens there that is sort of going to change the game. Okay, we know that red highlighted issues, that's a big deal. This is something that if you listen to last week's Casual Krakoa, you actually knew all of the issues that were going to be red because, as I talked about in the trade collection that I noticed for the Hellfire Gala coming, it was the 4 issues, Marauders 21, X-Men number 21, which comes next week. Then we have Planet-Size X-Men, and then we have Sword number 6. Okay, those are the red issues. So basically there's 1 issue per week throughout the month of June in the Hellfire Gala of essential comics, okay? If you read the others, and again, like I would argue you should read Hellions 12 because that book is amazing. It's so fun, but it's not like essential to the plot of it, okay? And the question I have here that I posed in the Marauders 21 review, and then I kind of didn't really get to it specifically, is did Marauders number 21 need to actually be read? Did it need to be a critical, big-time issue? It's clearly the kickoff of the Hellfire Gala. It is important and essential in the sense of it's starting this event. It's starting this thing that is going to lead to big revelations. But the issue itself doesn't actually contain the big revelations. I would argue coding it red, and this is like a semantics, really generally irrelevant thing, but just in terms of my perception of it, in terms of what readers should expect, it's not really a red issue. It's not. It's a kickoff of a huge thing in X-Men. It's going to lead to critical, big, game-changing moments, but we literally skip over the meat. Okay, we literally skip over what is announced in Planet-Size X-Men, and that's intentional. That's Marauders number 21 is doing that on purpose. But if you go into it thinking, oh, red highlighted issue, what's the game-changing Emma Frost master plan? They don't actually tell us. Okay, so it's left to predictions, it's left to theories, and of course, yours truly, the likes of Crack and Krakoa to talk about like, okay, what's actually going to happen? And my theory in Marauders, the 21 review that I did already on the channel was the humans and heroes, that are not mutants, they come out of this gala and they're shook, right? They're like, what just happened? I cannot believe what I just saw. And my theory was mutant kind, Emma Frost specifically, probably showed them resurrection capabilities. My guess was probably humanity was just made aware of mutant kind's ability to resurrect and basically, to have conquered death, to have eternal life through, Professor X cerebral backups and resurrection. And this is not something that humanity at large knows. This has not been publicized. It remains a secret. There was, I forget the character, but there was something where they're like, oh, I thought such and such was dead. And they're like, oh, we're always coming back, right? And some kind of sort of conversation, but they don't need literally they don't mean literally, like they don't know about it. They just don't know about resurrection yet, right? So my guess was Emma told them about this, and my theory initially was like, okay, just knowing about this would be enough for humanity to now be put in a corner, essentially, and have to deal with the fact that, like, the schemes, the Orcus type schemes of wiping out mutants, sentinels, these sorts of things of like, we'll kill them off, or we'll just, we'll conquer them, or this and that, right? The ways that violence has been utilized against mutants in the past, that won't work. Mutants are going to outlive that. They will be resurrected. And I think from Emma's perspective, which is very business-oriented, right? She's leading the Hellfire Trading Company. She's basically saying here, work with us because we're not going anywhere. like our Krakoan medicine and our pharmaceuticals are here. We're not going to flounder out. Actually, we're going to outlast you all, okay, through resurrection protocols. We're not going anywhere. So I think the resurrection process has to be unveiled. I very much believe that to be what everyone saw. Now, the piece of it that I did not mention in the initial review, the piece of it that I definitely left out, and then I thought like half an hour later, I straight up ran out of the shower to go write it down, was, okay, in X-Force 20, the issue after Marauders number 21, the Hellfire Gala crossover, we see that the Shi'ar, who come in Marauders, they tell Emma, hey, we brought you a present. Congrats on conquering Earth. And Emma's like, what? Like, don't know anything about that. Also, literally was just telling Dr. Doom, we're not trying to conquer Earth. Now he's laughing in my face. But in X-Force 20, we see that the Shi'ar deliver logic diamonds. Okay, these galactic, resources that the last time we saw these, I'm pretty sure it was utilized for Professor X's Cerebro backups. When he's having that conversation with Forge back in the House and Power days, they talk about the use of Shi'ar logic diamonds as storage for resurrection capabilities, is ultimately what that's building towards with Professor X's Cerebro backups. Why are they delivering more outside of, just being good allies and delivering a present, for this special occasion for mutant kind? And my thinking there is, okay, probably resurrection based, right? Now jump to Hellions number 12. We have poor, sad little Havoc, Alex Summers, asking everyone, trying to get Professor X's ear, trying to get Magneto's ear about Madeline Pryor's resurrection. Like, he's like, please just help me understand, why can't we resurrect Madeline? She is always looking good, and I would love to have her back. And they're hand waving and they're going and talking to other people, and it's a big party, and Alex isn't getting the answers he wants, right? But he's talking about resurrection a bunch. Okay, the clues are there, right? The clues are there in terms of resurrection. Now, what does that actually mean? How do we expand this theory? If, okay, resurrection is presented, what else? What else could Emma be thinking? I think probably she's thinking about offering human resurrection next. Okay, that's the next stage. That's the evolvement here, is to say, not only do we have resurrection for mutants, and that's just their right as mutants on Krakoa, resurrection is available to them. That is not going anywhere. Deal with it. Again, we're going to outlast you all, but also for an exorbitant fee, perhaps, or just, for playing along with our pharmaceutical goals, for signing on the dotted line with Krakoan business interests, resurrection could be available to you as well. What if Krakoa offers human resurrection next? Maybe that is the real bomb drop that Emma Frost has here to, again, not just show them something that we already know, but to actually take this to another level. And then you could factor in the use of the Shi'ar logic diamonds in terms of, actually making backups for humankind. There are enough telepaths on Krakoa to potentially turn this into like a business, right? Could X Corp get involved where it's like offering human resurrection becomes sort of like cryogenics, right? Sort of like, freezing individuals who are like, yeah, bring me back at a certain point in the future when this becomes practical. I feel like there's actually a really strong possibility that this is what is being offered. I think if it's not actually that far, because I don't see the Quiet Council, for example, signing off on, like, they're definitely not giving away human resurrection, right? They're definitely not going to say, yes, all of humanity, here is your resurrection. That is not a thing that is going to pass, okay? There is still animosity, and there are still protections that mutant kind needs in terms of their long-term planning for survival, right? But could it be select individuals offered for exorbitant rates? Could it be a moneymaker? Could it just be something you throw out there to just sort of show, again, mutant leverage and control? I think it's a possibility. And I also think, this is the sort of thing that, I talked about this a little bit in the Marauders review, but like, I think this would upset people. This would upset Captain America. This would upset Doctor Strange, for example, being like, you're messing with certain elements in spirituality and in the soul that should not be messed with. So that's further out there, okay? What if they offered human resurrection? That's pretty far out there. I think, again, even if that isn't happening, I think Emma's definitely showing resurrection to humanity, and I think that is the thing that is stunning them. Now, the other piece of it is that, like, and just grabbing some questions here. Thanks for those of you popping them into the chat. I'm trying to grab them as I go and continue talking. One of the challenges of running a solo live stream, for sure. But I think, too, like, if you think about the Resurrection Protocol showing humanity, there's also got to be an angle here of the space game, right? So we talked about this with every Hellfire conversation we've been having as we approach Planet-Size X-Men, as I've been talking about theories and predictions for what's to come in that comic. Like, that clearly is going to be mutants in space related. It's probably going to be Omega level mutants in space related. And then because the follow-up, an essential follow-up in Sword number 6, which is our mutant space program book, I mean, clearly this is going to be about terraforming Mars, about establishing galactic outposts throughout the world for mutant kind. Again, we have allyship with the Shia here, right? This is going to be mutants spreading out throughout the galaxy. Again, I think too that could be a thing where they're telling humanity like, yeah, our resurrection on Earth, even if you blew it up on Earth, we have all these bases throughout the galaxy. We're going to come back and we're not going to be pleased, So just sort of like establishing that sort of dominance and leverage. But that piece of it, I don't know that Emma has a great handle on. I like the idea of her being more in the loop on everything, right? Of her being more in the loop on what Magneto and Professor X are planning. Because one thing we definitely see today in Marauders and especially in X-Force is Emma's pretty on top of what's going on in Krakoa. And I like that version of the character. She is definitely, I think, a sort of needed foil to Professor X and Magneto, who we see, they are a little too comfortable. They're a little too comfortable running their own games, right? Because we see in X-Force, for example, not to totally jump the gun, but like Professor X sees what Beast is doing, which we all are looking at and screaming and saying Beast is too far gone, and he's like, basically like, earmuffs, I'm not listening. He's like, oh, if I don't know about it, I can't be penalized for this. Whereas Emma sees what Beast is doing and says, this is a disaster, this is a problem, and something needs to be done. So I think Emma is an important voice in potentially, sort of standing up to Professor X and Magneto, because where else is that voice coming from? In a lot of ways, you have Cyclops and Jean, who are not on the Quiet Council now, who are stepping off, who are going to be leading the X-Men, as we'll see announced in these issues. You have Storm setting her sights on space, right? And I'm sure we'll see in Planet Size and probably in Sword specifically what that means for Storm. I hope like leading a team or getting her own solo run about her galactic missions for looking for galactic mutant kind. But it's like you have Nightcrawler, who is hitting the bottle hard at the gala. Priest Kurt is partying hard, and he's in a rut, right? In ways, right? He is finding himself. He is learning what his role on Krakoa is. He's not in position to necessarily be playing that role. And again, then you have like the Winter Council of Mystique, Sinister, Exodus. It's not going to come from them, right? It's for various reasons. So Emma, I think, is really kind of the one, and Kate to a degree, but Kate doesn't quite have the planning or the power, frankly, that Emma does here, and I think she's the one. And I also think she's the one who, we talked about this, I think, last time, because Emma Frost is featured on the teaser images for the Hickman-written Inferno series. That's coming fall 2021, okay? And I think there's a lot of reason to believe that she probably knows about Moira or will be finding out about Moira if she doesn't already. Now, remember, a few people alluded to this, and it's not something I've forgotten, but Emma is the one with Kate who establishes the Moira McTaggart Memorial Hospital in Madripoor, okay, and invites Professor X and Magneto to come see. She probably knows. Like that's almost certainly not an accident. So I'm here for Emma knowing a lot more than she's letting on and being way more involved. I think that's an exciting thing. So okay, there you have it for the major theories for like what humanity saw. I'm definitely interested in alternate takes on like what do people think might, like Emma and mutant kind might have shown humanity that would give them that reaction, because there's no indication. Actually, there's no way it's like a violent lashing out. Like there's just zero way, because look here at like Captain America and Doctor Strange, like addressing pretty calmly like, hey, what we just saw, yeah, that was pretty crazy. A lot of people aren't going to like it. You have businessmen and whatnot running out and businesswomen being like, this is going to be a problem. But there's not like, no one's like coated in blood, right? I don't think we're going to have a red wedding scenario, at least at this juncture in the Hellfire Gala. But I am curious, like, what do other people think? Is there anything it could be besides revealing resurrection? Like, that's the only thing that I'm really focused on after reading these comics and thinking like, yeah, it kind of feels like it has to be that. And I think that makes sense. Like, I actually think that's an interesting development for this line and for how humanity perceives mutant kind going forward, right? I do think that'll be interesting. So that was Marauders number 21. Again, like, I don't think it's a color red essential kind of issue. It is an issue that should be read, READ, because it's the kickoff to the Hellfire Gala. And despite the fact that, like Inferno and the Destiny Diaries kind of weighs heavier in my mind in terms of what's coming for Mutant Kind. The Hellfire Gala still has major, major revelations to play out. Again, like the fact that it's happening now with the Planet-Size X-Men, it also gives me hope for an extension of the Reign of X, for an extension of the Krakoa era of Moira's Life 10, which again, remember, will end. It will end. We will go to a Life 11. This will not go forever. But it gives me hope for that, just being like, well, if we have all these revelations in Planet-Size X-Men and all these plans for space, like, I want to see those play out. Readers are going to want to see those play out. I think that buys this Life 10 Krakoa era some time. Okay, so we've got here a question in the Super Chat. What mystery conversation do you think the book teased about Emma and Banshee? First off, thanks so much for the question and supporting Comic Book Herald here in the chat and in the Super Chat. So Emma Frost and Sean Cassidy, Banshee, they go back to the Generation X days, actually. In the 90s, series Generation X was when that was started. Emma and Sean were like the main, headmaster school teachers for those kid mutants. So anytime you see the two of them converse, and they actually have a really interesting relationship, I think, because that's a period in Emma Frost's life where she is kind of coming out of her like full-on, Hellfire Club Hellions phase and really getting more helpful with Mutant Kind, sort of, it's not quite the Morrison quietly new X-Men turn to full-on X-Men, heroism, but it's definitely moving her in that direction. And then, of course, Banshee, is there from 75. Giant-Size X-Men, he's always been with the X-Men, right? So it's an interesting relationship. I think anytime you see the two of them together, the thought is, oh, Gen X book, that's a possibility. I think in the short term, what I think was Emma was talking about was they talked about two invitations. One was to the Hellfire Gala, so Banshee's there. The second is that I think probably it was an invitation to join the Marauders, right? Storm's leaving. Banshee did not get elected to the X-Men. That vote went to Polaris. So I think it gives up a roster spot for Banshee, essentially, to join the Marauders. Down the road, could it mean a Gen X book? I think that would be a smart one for this for the X Office to play with. I don't anticipate we're quite there yet. Although that said, again, like, New Mutants by Vita Ayala and Rodriguez is probably the closest we have right now to like actually having a school on Krakoa. I do think there's a really good opportunity to reestablish like mutants in school because that's been such a tenet of X-Men comics, throughout the 2000s. I don't think that would be a bad thing to add. So it's interesting. Now, we also have a question here in the Super Chat. Again, thanks so much for the support. Emma didn't remember even asking the Shi'ar for the logic diamonds. Do you think this might have to do with Mystique? That's a good theory. I think literally anything that is happening at the Hellfire Gala right now is definitely in the shadow of Mystique's rage. And the fact that she should be beyond furious with Professor X, Magneto, and the like for not resurrecting Destiny. I guess like, if you're real Team Mags and Professor X, which I don't know how in this moment you could be, it's on Mystique for her failure. And she did have opportunities. She self-sabotaged to a degree. But again, like the cruelty, especially of Professor X in not resurrecting Destiny and the way they're going about it, like she is filled with rage. And yes, she is mutant and she is on the council and she is at these at the Hellfire Gala. So could she be posing as others to make things happen? I think definitely. I think that's a strong candidate for any sort of murder mystery that could be set up with Magneto, and frankly, it's almost maybe too obvious because I think too many people will see that coming. Why would she pose as Emma and request logic diamonds from the Shi'ar? That I don't know. If those are primarily, okay, so if those are primarily used for the storage necessary for resurrections, could Mystique be ordering shipments of logic diamonds that nobody quite knows about, steal some of those for herself, and now be setting up a situation where she has some sort of opportunity for resurrection for herself to bring back Destiny on her own, right? She involves whoever she needs to do that because she doesn't have, the telepathic ability on her own. She doesn't have the cerebral capabilities. But okay, now we're getting somewhere, right? If she's building and gathering the resources necessary, there's something there to her posing as Emma in trying to get those logic diamonds for herself. One question I had actually that was kind of, I didn't necessarily think connected to anything I was going to talk about today, but now it kind of does. Mystique, when she witnesses, So this is all in X-Men 20. This is the Jonathan Hickman written issue that came out last week. And she watches as Orchis resurrects, as Dr. Aaliyah Gregor resurrects her husband's consciousness in a Nimrod body. And in the moment, I questioned that scene pretty significantly. I was like, why is she? Because she had a bomb in her pocket to destroy that facility and to prevent a Nimrod coming online. That was the whole point. And I questioned it pretty significantly, saying, like, that was kind of goofy. Like, why did she have to watch that play out? And a number of listeners and readers pointed out, and I think rightfully so, that, like, that would be a very personal thing for Mystique to be witnessing, to watch someone who has lost a loved one bring them back. And you have Mystique literally trying to do that same thing with Destiny. Like, everything she's doing right now is trying to achieve that same goal. So that might hit her in an emotional space. That might hit her in a very personal space. It also might be her, all of a sudden the wheels are turning and the gears are turning, and she's watching this thinking, wait, what if I uploaded Destiny's consciousness to a Nimrod? Okay, could we have Mystique thinking about this alternate version of restoring consciousness that Dr. Aaliyah Gregor has developed and established the technology for? Could she be, and this was something where I said, like, there has to be more to it than just Mystique plotting very badly, because otherwise that's kind of a hole in that comic. Otherwise, that's kind of an empty space in Hickman's storytelling, which, again, he's not a careless storyteller, right? Far from it. So I think potentially what we could have here is Mystique looking at that Nimrod opportunity and saying, oh, okay, maybe I can bring Destiny back without Professor X and Magneto. Like, I think that's the mission she's going to be on, is trying to figure out, how do I bring back Irene Adler, Destiny, without Professor X and Magneto? And I think now we look at, okay, gathering a bunch of Shia logic diamonds. We look at, a possible, like, utilization of a Nimrod technology in whatever form that takes. Maybe there's alternate options. So yeah, I mean, I think, like, anything where somebody's like, I don't remember something happening and it was in their name, like, you gotta think about Mystique. You just, I mean, like, that's the game she's playing right now. So that's a really good question. I dig it. We'll get some more questions as I go. One thing I do also want to talk about as I get going, I'll get to the comics that I'm talking about today, but I do also want to just touch on real quickly. It's not even really a theory. This was a piece of information that was presented to me by a listener who on Twitter said, hey, have you heard this conversation by comedian Anthony Jeselnik on his podcast? Not a podcast I listen to, not a comedian I follow closely. And I thought, like, well, this probably doesn't really mean a lot, but whatever, I'll check it out. And there's like a 10-minute conversation. And I tweeted this out. I don't have the link on me right now. But, like, there's a 10-minute conversation here from the comedian Jeselnik talking about, at the kind of the front end, middle, start of the pandemic, actually having conversations with Marvel and Jonathan Hickman about himself writing a Sabretooth miniseries. I think he actually talked about doing, like, kind of like a maxi series, like a 12-issue kind of thing, like DC often does. It was really interesting, honestly. And basically what it established more than anything is, like, assuming the story is true, and it certainly sounds like it was, Jeselnik was very close to writing a 12-issue Sabretooth series post-exile. This is all, like, what is going on with Sabretooth in this exile prison. So and it didn't go through, obviously. Like, we didn't get that book. Kind of by the time it would have come out, it would have been too late. Basically, it was his take on it, and it didn't happen for a bunch of reasons. But what that told me was, like, Hickman and the Marvel brain trust involved were basically thinking, like, yeah, a Sabretooth story makes sense. Like, there are things going on with Victor Creed in his exile, in his Krakoan exile black hole, where there's full story to be told. Like, we don't know anything in terms of what information has actually been delivered about what is going on with Sabretooth, about what exile is really like. We've heard Professor X, when he exiles him, he's basically like, you'll be awake and conscious the whole time and you won't be able to do anything. But also raises the question, like, well, how does Professor X know anything about it? No one's been in there before. So it's interesting to think about, like, what is Sabretooth actually going through. This podcast story from Jeselnik was basically like, I was going to tell that story, and then it didn't happen. Now, so it tells us two things. It tells us there are stories to be told with Sabretooth. There's stuff going on in his exile that is worth a story. And then the second thing it tells me is, you may remember on one of AIPT's X-Men Mondays, there was a sudden reveal that Victor Laval, famous horror author, has also written some excellent comics from Boom Studios, Destroyer, for example. Really, really great writer. Like, love Victor LaValle stuff. He's going to be writing something in the X line. Hasn't been announced yet. Okay. And to me, it kind of locks in. It's going to be a Sabretooth book. Like, I am 98% confident Victor LaValle is going to be writing a Sabretooth comic because they already had a pitch for a book that they were close on. Victor LaValle does horror better than just about anybody, right? He could definitely write this sort of weird exile prison book with Sabretooth in it. The teaser we got when they talked about that book was it's going to be a character we haven't seen for a long time. That's Sabretooth. So I'm going to say right now, lock it in. Victor LaValle Sabretooth book. I think that was a popular theory at the time. This information to me, this conversation that there was actually going to be a Sabretooth comic and it just didn't come out for basically like timing reasons. It says to me like that's what we're going to get, and I'm super excited about that. LaValle he's a big X-Men fan as well. He actually when I interviewed him for the Comic Book Herald podcast, he mentioned having watched Crack and Krakoa. He was like, "Hey, you do a nice job," and that was probably like the highlight of my life. Like, that was so cool. I was flying high for a day after that. So it's going to be a good book. I'm excited about it. You're hearing it here first. Officially announced. Victor LaValle Sabretooth book. Is there anything to back this up other than all of that conjecture? Absolutely not. But I think that's what we're going to see. So I'm super excited about that. Definitely want to hear what people think about an upcoming Sabretooth book. Okay. All right. Let's talk about the other comics that came out today. Let's start with Hellions number 12, which is I gotta start this with an apology. I need to apologize because during one I think it was the review of Wave X that I did on Crack and Krakoa not too long ago, I said my favorite X-Men books were, Wave X, Sword, X-Men, maybe I threw New Mutants in there. I forgot Hellions. I just forgot. I completely forgot to mention Hellions. It is still in contention for the best X-Men book. It is still in contention, despite being, of those 4 books, more so than New Mutants, of the 3, of Wave X, of Sword, of X-Men, Hellions has the least like mission critical type stuff, unless you're maybe the Sinister stuff, But just on a humor level, it is the funniest superhero comic I've ever read. I mean, I don't think anything comes close. I laugh out loud frequently. I don't laugh out loud reading a heck of a lot of comics. Hellions makes me laugh out loud a ton. All of the Nanny and Sinister stuff today is beyond glorious. I just think Zeb Wells, Steven Segovia, David Curiel, Ariana Maher, they are on another level with the humor and the heart and just the hijinks of Hellions. This book is really special, and it defies whatever the expectations would have been, I think, heading into this. I think, like, again, it's just this super weird team. It was like, oh, okay, they're going to try to do a Suicide Squad riff. It's its own thing. We can stop saying, oh, the X-Men Suicide Squad. We're past that. Hellions is its own thing, and it is one of the best Marvel comics of this decade. Like regardless of how the rest of the decade plays out, it is a super, super special work. And Hellions number 12 proved it again. I mean, this is twice now where in Ten of Swords and now in the Hellfire Gala, where all of a sudden Hellions is in a crossover where it like literally doesn't belong. Like, no one's invited on the Hellions. Not no one, but majority of the Hellions aren't invited, to the festivities in the Hellfire Gala. And then somehow it's still like the best book I read today. Again, like Marauders 21, interesting. There's a lot to predict. There's a lot to theorize. Hellions is the best comic I read today. I mean, hands down. The recurring saga of Mr. Sinister being absolutely terrified by Nanny is like one of my favorite things in comics. There's even like a strange sweetness to this book, again, of Grey Crow falling heavily for Conan, right? Of even like Empath, who's the worst, using his powers to make Orphan Maker feel drunk, even though he's too young to drink, right? Getting him to the point of yelling bananas in battle just because he likes bananas. Like, it's just, Sinister is hilarious. These characters are hilarious. Nightcrawler is horribly drunk in this comic, so we do get that. It's just like, I love everything about Hellions. If you're not, I don't, this isn't a secret. I've been talking about it a ton. I think like everyone, reading X-Men comics has been saying this, but you can make a strong case that Hellions is the most consistent and frankly excellent X-Men book, and it's a hard thing to argue. I've got the best X-Men comics of 2021 so far. I'm going to have that list up on Comic Book Herald this weekend, and I'll probably put out a video as well, just kind of sharing my picks. And honestly, even within that, I had Hellions pretty high. I probably had it too low. Like, reading this issue again, I'm like, oh yeah, like this might be the book I'm most excited to read just on a satisfaction story level, as opposed to like a big picture, where's all the X-Men stuff going level, right? Like just on a, is this comic good? Does it make me smile and laugh level? Hellions nails that like so often, and it's glorious. So a lot of love for Hellions. Again, profuse apology for having forgotten to include it in when I talked about my favorite books way back when. But yeah, I'm loving Hellions. 12 again. It's not like, does it add a ton to the Hellfire Gala narrative? No, it doesn't. There is a teaser at the end, so the Krakoan for the next issue reads Return of the Clone. There's a Mr. Sinister clone that shows up at the end of Hellions here, and it's going to be Sinister clone stuff. I mean, Mr. Sinister always has a billion clones, so like I can't say specifically like what the problem's going to be. At this point, I haven't given it a lot of thought, but I mean, Mr. Sinister always has too many clones, so am I surprised one is going to pop back up and cause trouble? Is he going to claim to be the real Sinister, and this one's been masquerading the whole time? Sure, yeah, lots of Sinister clone hijinks, I think, is going to be a good thing for these X-Men comics, and Hellions doesn't miss. So until proven otherwise, I'm definitely on board with basically everything this comic is doing and where it's going. Wherever it wants to go, I will follow Hellions. I also see a question here from Xavier in the chat. Did we forget about the Arakan geneticist? No, I have seen Tarn the Uncaring on upcoming covers, I think, for Hellions. Tarn the Uncaring and the Locust Vial from Ten of Swords, they were teased as well in the Reign of X promo. One of the few things from the Reign of X promo that we haven't really seen delivered on. Actually, that was in January at the start of this year. But I'm pretty confident from what I've seen, Tarn the Uncaring and the Arakan will be coming back. I started listening to Dune on audiobook. I've never consumed a single piece of Frank Herbert's Dune before, and I have been astonished how much Hickman pulls from Dune. I'm like 11% into the audiobook. I'm not far. But Arrakis is like the Dune planet. Okay, Araco. I'm not the first person to notice this, but I am only experiencing this now for myself. And I'm like, oh, like Dune is clearly a massive, massive influence on this comics writer that I've loved for a long time. So I will be definitely sharing more of that journey as I get more immersed in Dune culture, because clearly it is influencing literal naming and as well as just sci-fi and strategic direction of the franchise from here. So if you'd like to listen or read Dune along with me, starting now, I'm hoping to finish the first novel by the end of June. All right, let's get to a super chat question before we talk X-Force. I was thinking that they have already terraformed different worlds with the clones from Sinister and tying it to Storm and be the leader of those clones. That was so in the Powers of 10 Lifeline, we see Mars, fully terraformed. There's like cloning pits that are led by Sinister, presumably his clones. I don't think or know that Krakoa is that far yet, or that they would want to do that. Again, like Moira greatly distrusts Sinister, and obviously he's heavily involved here. Through Professor X and Magneto. If Moira has anything to say about it, I feel like she would not want Sinister clones running around and operating, like planets out in space. I mean, certainly, like that's if the big Hellfire Gala revelation was like, here's a live feed of Sinister clones growing mutants on Mars, like that'd be concerning for humanity as well. I don't think we're there yet, and I like the idea of Storm leading that kind of project, the Make More Mutants part of it all. I'm skeptical of Sinister being too heavily involved, although maybe I shouldn't be, because Professor X and Magneto might just be like, forget it. We'll do it. We'll do anything. And Moira's not coming out of her little, I don't know what you call it, her little room there. So maybe they just do what they want to do, and we go from there. The next Super Chat question reads, also, we know that Legion can resurrect for Mystique and get in with Way of X. Yeah, so the thing we saw in Way of X #2 was Legion resurrects himself. Does he have the, being an Omega level mutant, Omega level telepath, does he have the capability to utilize, the thing about Legion is, I think he has the power to, like, resurrect Destiny, for example, but I think the problem would be, like, where are you getting the backup from? Like, I think he would still need to steal or somehow get a backup Irene Adler, maybe that's where you get Sinister involved with the Mystique Legion team, kind of making their new Krakoa, for mutants who don't trust Professor X and Magneto, which is a growing number. So I don't think Legion could just up and do it without additional information, without an actual Destiny backup. But again, maybe that's the type of thing they could get from Sinister, and maybe it wouldn't even be that hard, honestly. So, side note here, we have a question. What's a good resource for all the cameos in the Hellfire Gala? I'm almost positive there was one for Conan O'Brien and Joe Quesada. Oh, for sure. I mean, Conan was definitely in this. There was an email, a PR email that Marvel sent out not too long ago. So honestly, if you just Google Hellfire Gala and celebrities or whatever, I'm sure you'll find some. I know they mentioned Eminem, who I wasn't looking for. I saw Run the Jewels. Conan, you mentioned. I think there are definitely some comics creators. Joe Quesada, I think Jerry Duggan and Matteo Lally are in there as well. Who else did I see? There are some other. Oh, Ira Glass they mentioned. I didn't notice, but they mentioned Ira Glass is going to be in this. Yeah, I mean, there's a handful. I definitely don't have that available around the top of my head. It was not definitely not my main focus, but I'm sure there are more in there if you want to explore. So, all right, let's talk a little bit about X-Force number 20 before we keep things going. So X-Force number 20 was the second issue in the Hellfire Gala that came out today, and I think my main takeaway from this is twofold. One, Josh Cassara is great and rules on crowd shots. Love it. Love the work he's doing on the crowd shots. Best in the game. I think is very possible. Definitely best in the X-Men line at doing these massive crowd shots, getting lots of characters involved, having fun little Easter eggs. We saw it in the now classic Green Lagoon shot. Do I have that image here? I guess not. But his crowd shots are incredible. He's got a great one in X-Force number 20. And thing two, Beast continues to be the worst. His God complex is going to be a problem. It is a problem. It's going to continue to be a problem. He has brought his Terra Verde mess to the gala, which is a little surprising. He's got his So Beast, if we remember the story correctly, and it's been a minute since I've reread X-Force, but Beast committed a genocide, okay, on the Terra Verde population. They were a potential rival in terms of pharmaceutical manufacturing. He has tried to turn it now where he is in his God complex, thinks he is helping Terra Verde people. He has converted them essentially into what they would call a banana republic. Krakoa is driving these individuals. These ambassadors from Terra Verde are like Swamp Thing light. They've got green creeping out of their eyes and onto their arms and whatnot. He brings them to the gala. Clearly a mistake. I don't know why he thought this would be a good idea. They think they have the Floronics in their body hacked. They being, X-Force. They do not. Someone else hacks that. That's going to be a problem going forward. And it's just everything Beast does is the worst. The piece of it that part's not surprising at this point. Beast is so far gone. He's the leading candidate for Krakoan Exile. I mean, by far. I think again, Selene should be there, but they're not going to do that apparently. But Beast, it's they got to have again when there was talk of a trial, it was oh, that should be about Beast, and then it turned into a trial of Magneto. Okay, who has not done as terrible things as Beast in this era as the again, self-appointed, mutant CIA leader. I think one thing that stands out to me here is Professor X sees what he's doing. And yet again, gives Beast the green light, basically being I'm not listening, do what you want, Beast. And I would say at this point, if you're going to toss Beast in the pit of exile for what he's done, if we get to that point, Professor X should be in there with him as well. I think that's not a shocker. It's not going to happen that way. Beast is going to be the fall guy, but it's Professor X is just as guilty for the things that are going down at this point too, which definitely we can't forget. We also see in this issue, which was a nice development, is that Emma Frost is appropriately concerned about Terra Verde. She sees what is happening here. She knows what X-Force is doing, which Beast and Sage have been keeping generally secret. I hope this means Beast will be up for exile. I hope this is something post-Gala that Beast is going to bring, or that Emma is going to bring to the council and basically say, we need to have a Beast conversation. The other big development in X-Force number 20 is we get Deadpool swimming to the island to try to join in his little floaties. It's pretty great, honestly. His quip about, let's work up a data page to Wolverine is exactly the kind of meta commentary I am here for from Deadpool in this era of X-Men comics. There's a quote from Deadpool at the end kind of suggesting a lot of things, but suggesting that he might join X-Force, and not the worst fit. I mean, he's obviously like an uncanny X-Force player in the classic Rick Remender written run. I love him in that run. It's very good. There's a lot of, so in his own series written by Kelly Thompson, the Krakoa issue essentially was like, Deadpool, you're not a mutant, you can't join. And I think that like that's reiterated here, that like he's not actually a mutant. I don't have like the genealogy tests and charts on Deadpool. I think the general understanding right now, Deadpool is not a mutant in the Marvel Universe. Okay, like that is my understanding of it, at least the way it's been presented. Probably this is something that has lots of fan debate, but for me, it's like, okay, he's not a mutant. So could he join X-Force as a non-mutant ally on the ground? I'm kind of like, why not? I actually think he's a good fit. He's got a lot of chemistry with Wolverine, Domino. It's easy to see it with Quentin Quire. He would totally object. Like he would actually be a voice of reason for Beast in a lot of ways, so long as Beast is around. So, yeah, I mean, I'm into the idea. The Krakoan for the next issue for X-Force reads Slaughterhouse. It's X-Force, so that's not surprising. Could that be Ben Percy bringing back the manslaughter, the weapon something or other from the Weapon 10 program? Maybe. I talked about it in the Curse of the Man Thing video I did not too long ago. All right. We got a couple more super chat questions that I'll do here, but definitely keep them coming, keep the conversation going. I am enjoying it. I'm trying to get into X-Men. Any advice? So many X-Men comics. Yeah, there are. This is a big one. I would say first thing you can do is you could Google X-Men reading order, find all the resources on comicbookherald.com for tips and picks that I have written out fully on comicbookherald.com. That would be my number one recommendation. Number two, I actually do have a video coming on this. It's going to be up in the relative near future, where to start with X-Men, specifically right now, like specifically for fans in 2021. So I think like that will be useful to a lot of people, because it'll be talking about like, okay, like you could start back in the 60s in the Silver Age, you could start with Claremont in 1975, you could start with Grant Morrison in 2001. Which of those is the best pick for different types of readers? I'm going to address all that. So I will have a video coming. But again, the short term, you can go to comicbookherald.com, or again, probably the fast thing you could do is just X-Men reading order, Google, and CBH will be there, and you could hop in that way. So those would be my advice right off the bat. I mean, I think the other thing too is like, if you just want to know what's going on in X-Men right now, you can start with House of X and Powers of 10. Start with the Jonathan Hickman written, Pepe Larraz, R.A. Silva on art. Read House of X, read Powers of 10, and listen. You're gonna feel at times a little overwhelmed. There's gonna be stuff like, if you've truly not read X-Men comics before, there's gonna be stuff where you're like, I don't get this. I don't know what this is a reference to. Plow through it. Just plow through it. There's going to be stuff too that you're like, this is awesome. I love it. I love X-Men. It's really good. It'll make you feel that way as well. So plow through the stuff that you don't feel like I would say don't feel like you have to go back and try to understand everything, because you will lose and you will grow fatigued, and it will feel like homework, and it will make you not want to read comics. And at the end of the day, that is the worst thing, right? That is the worst approach. I've been there. I get it. So I know why you want to, but in the short term, I would say go to Comic Book Herald, or just start with House and Powers and then go from there, and check out all the resources on Crack and Krakoa. I mean, seriously, like that's why I do these videos and explain things the way that I do, is so fans who are less familiar with these characters can catch up a little more quickly than trying to read everything. Okay, so but again, I will have a Where to Start video coming in the near future too, that I think we'll talk about this a lot more thoroughly, because it's a really big question and it's a very common question. There's a question here I'm seeing in the chat that is not a super chat, but it says, do you reread the chat afterwards? Honestly, if I knew how to do that, I might. I do not. I don't listen. Like I am not a YouTube power user here by any measure. I have grown in knowledge since I started doing this with any regularity, basically when House and Powers of 10 started in 2019. But I check out some of the stuff as it goes, and one of these days I'll figure out how to dig back in and look for good stuff. But right now, no, it is not a major thing I'm doing. There's a question here from the Super Chat which asks, was Black Panther at the gala after Storm stole his sword? He was. We see Black Panther, or somebody in the Black Panther costume, in, I think was it Marauders? Yeah, it was Marauders 21. No, it was Hellions. Hellions 12, he's having a conversation with Mr. Sinister, of all people. So yes, they are on decent enough terms that Wakanda is represented. We also saw Shuri dancing with WizKid, which is a lot of fun. All right, y'all. Been going for close to an hour. That means we're chugging the spider water, chugging the Spider-Man water. I got my Slam Dunk Punks sticker here from the amazing Old Head graphic novel. Highly recommended. Came out kickstarted by Kyle Starks and his colorist, whose name I'm blanking on at the moment. But Old Head by Kyle Starks. It is awesome. It is hilarious. If you like basketball, vampires, and comedy, check it out. Check out Old Head. It has nothing to do with X-Men, but it's a really good graphic novel. All right, we got one more thing that I want to talk about, and then I will be wrapping it. So get in your questions now as I'm talking again live. And again, too, like, if you're hopping in midway through these live chats, if you're hopping in late or whatever, these are all available after the fact as well. If you go to the Comic Book Herald YouTube channel, subscribe. Check out the playlist. Check out the Hickman X-Men, the Casual Krakoa playlist. I've also got a Reign of X playlist. They should be included in there as well, all these live videos. Because honestly, like, I would say right now, like the last 3 weeks, like my best predictions and theories are definitely in these live conversations. So hopefully people are finding the same thing and agreeing. The one thing I did want to touch on before we end this, and again, if there's good questions to come here, I will address them. But the one thing I did want to touch on that a few people were asking about was non-X-Men related, and it was about the big Marvel news today, okay, which is the creative swap between Venom and Immortal Hulk. So Immortal Hulk, written by Al Ewing, it is one of the best Marvel comics of definitely of the Marvel Fresh Start era, probably much longer. I would say it's going to be a lot of people's favorite Hulk run of all time. For me, it almost certainly is my favorite. I have a lot of affinity for the Greg Pak run, which starts with Planet Hulk. I mean, iconic storyline. Really like the work Greg Pak did on Hulk, but I mean, Immortal Hulk is something else, right? It has been not just like one of the best Marvel comics, but it's also been in like best comics conversation, which is always kind of like the peak of Marvel, cracking that code. So obviously, like, it's a bummer to see that, and we already knew that was going to end, though. Okay, that was Al Ewing, Joe Bennett, and collaborators. We knew that was going to end with issue number 50. Okay, issue 49 I think comes out in August. I don't know if 50 will come out in September or later. I'm gonna guess they're gonna do a massive oversized thing. But I'm excited to like see how they want that story to end. But what's gonna happen after it ends? And Cates and Stegman, where Donny Cates and Ryan Stegman, they're already ending their Venom run. Okay, that's happening like this month, right? They had King in Black was kind of the final event. If you haven't read that, this is maybe kind of a spoiler, but I won't spoil it. Basically, they set up Venom for some cosmic-y space shenanigans, which is very up Al Ewing's, is ballpark, right? So you're going to have Al Ewing and Brian Hitch on Venom, and co-writer Ram V. All right, we'll come back to that. You're going to have Donny Cates and Ryan Ottley on Hulk. I want to call him Ryan Ottley, which, I mean, fair, right? He's a good-looking dude. Who is he's the penciler, was the artist for a long time on Invincible with Robert Kirkman. Amazing work there. I love Invincible. And of course, he's doing Amazing Spider-Man, or has been doing a lot of Amazing Spider-Man with Nick Spencer. So Donny Cates and Ottley, that'll be an interesting pairing on Hulk. I think, like, I'm not the hottest on Cates stuff right now. I was higher on his work in the past. I actually think Thor, and this is something I'll talk about in the best Marvel comics of the year so far, Thor has gotten a lot better in this second story arc, in Prey. I actually really like what Cates and Nick Klein and Matthew Wilson are doing there in Thor after the first storyline, which I was not that into. They've really picked it up in the second arc. It's a very fun story if you like Thor, like Asgard, like the Asgardian history. They've done some really good work there. So I think Donny Cates on a Hulk, again, like, I really appreciate his willingness to pick up these titles after basically basically he's doing, and somebody tweeted this today, but basically he's doing like post MJ Bulls twice now, because you had Jason Aaron on Thor, which was this massive, excellent run, okay? And now you have Al Ewing on Immortal Hulk, and now you got Donny Cates stepping in saying, yeah, I'll follow up both of those acts. That takes some confidence, and that takes some tenacity. And whether or not it's going to work, I mean, regardless, I appreciate the effort. Okay, so I think, and again too, like his stuff does really well. I mean, he's got huge fandom. Again, I've cooled on it a bit, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't interested in seeing this. I really love Ryan Ottley's art. So I'm curious, just like how do you follow up a run like an Immortal Hulk? What do you even do? Like that is a challenging question. So I'm curious to see what happens there. I think the book I'm probably more excited for is the Al Ewing, Ron V, and again Brian Hitch, Venom. Ewing, obviously, his credentials right now are like he's one of Marvel's top writers. I mean, it's him, Hickman. I don't know who else. Surprised somebody I'm forgetting. Zeb Wells, because I didn't mention Hellions previously. But like he's clearly top tier writer. There's a danger with Ewing. Probably the biggest danger is like, okay, he's gonna finish Immortal Hulk, but he's also writing Guardians of the Galaxy, and he's writing Sword, and he's leading the Marvel Space Age. There's this danger with him of being like, are you doing too much? Like, is there too much going on here? Not for his own personal comfort, for like an idea and a quality perspective, And I think too, like, so he co-wrote Valkyrie with the Jane Foster book with Jason Aaron. Co-writing is a tricky thing, Like, there's not a lot of superstar writers who choose to co-write things and succeed. There just aren't. I mean, you get certain writing teams, Dan Abnett, Andy Lanning, who clearly work together as a pair, but there aren't a lot of superstar writers who are like, yeah, let's collab, let's do a co-writing thing and really knock it out of the park. Probably there's some examples. I mean, Scott Snyder sort of bringing James Tynion the Fourth up into the game and then co-writing a lot of stuff with him, I think is probably a more recent example on DC of having some success there. Definitely in the Batman era that was more successful. But again, Ewing with Aaron on that, Valkyrie is like an interesting book, but it also, I think the problem when they're co-writing like that is like, it never really feels like an Al Ewing comic. It feels like this, it doesn't feel, quite like his Immortal Hulk, which obviously just like a better book, but it doesn't feel like it's his own thing. And Ram V too is this creator who absolutely can do his own thing. He's writing an amazing Swamp Thing for DC right now. If you haven't read Ram V's solo work, you're seriously missing out. I mean, one of the best creators in comics right now. The Many Deaths of Layla Starr, coming out from Boom Studios, is one of my favorites of 2021. I loved Blue and Green, which came out last year. Ram V's work is excellent. These Savage Shores came out from Vault Comics not too long ago. So, like, these are two superstar creators who are going to be teaming up on Venom. I guess, the question is just, like, how well do they collaborate? It's kind of a unique thing, actually, in comics to have writers at the top of their game coming together to team up on a property as large as Venom after a run that was as successful as Cates and Stegman's. I mean, it fizzled out towards the end, for sure, I think. But, Venom was a huge deal. I mean, that was a huge rejuvenation for that franchise. And then it is interesting to me. I can't say I'm super, stoked about Brian Hitch on this one, purely from the perspective of, it feels mean to say that, but it's just like, I don't know. Hitch is like his big work was in that most people think of as like late 90s Authority and Ultimates, in Marvel Ultimates with Mark Millar, right? And obviously he's an incredibly talented artist. I mean, like literally like game-changing, influential in so many ways, but that stuff's also 21 years ago. And it's just not very progressive or looking forward to bring him in on a Venom title. And I think he feels like an odd fit stylistically for Venom specifically. I hope to be proven dead wrong on that, right? Hopefully it's an amazing looking book and everybody loves it, right? But I think Hitch is well known for like panoramic views, this very cinematic feel that has taken over comics. For Venom, that's not necessarily the key. But again, like I'm not the expert on Hitch's art. Hope to be proven totally wrong on that. But just from like a gut announcement perspective, I'm super excited about Ewing and Ram V. I'm skeptical of the art there. I'm probably more excited about Donny Cates and Ryan Ottley on Hulk, even though I like Ram V and Ewing individually as writers more. So that's where I'm at there. But yeah, I'm curious to hear what people think about those comics. I think either way, like those are good creative teams. like those are definitely good creative teams to take again as follow-ups to runs that were incredibly successful for Fresh Start. So, all right, if there aren't any other major questions, I think that's going to do it for me. Again, I'm going to be trying to do these basically every Wednesday that I can after the comics come out, so you can read your X-Men comics. Come on here to Casual Krakoa. We can talk about what happened and talk theories and all that fun stuff. Again, I'm excited to read X-Men 21 next week. That's going to be the next most important issue in the X-Men line of comics. We're going to have Excalibur number 12, X-Men number 21, and then Children of the Atom number 4. I know people like to clown on it, but Children of the Atom number 3 was actually really interesting. It was a kind of a twist I didn't see coming. So I'm hopeful that the 4th issue will deliver on that, despite the fact that it's in the gala. I'm hopeful that it'll kind of give us what's going on. So thanks so much, everybody, for listening. Thanks so much for joining live to those of you who did. Again, it's super encouraging and rewarding to see people that actually want to come hang out and talk comics at the end of the day. I love it. But yeah, I'm gonna de-gala here. We're gonna get the suit jacket off. We're gonna relax, get on the PJs early tonight. And yeah, I'll definitely be talking comics with you next week. So look for Casual Krakoa's Wednesdays, circa 5 to 6:30 Central Standard Time. All right, so thanks everybody for listening, and as always, enjoy the comics.